Good morning, everyone. So I know most of you, but for those of you who don't know me, I am Kelly Meekum. I am the Digital Banking Operations Manager at Chelsea Groton Bank. One of the things that we do here in digital banking, specifically cash management operations, is ACH origination. So I know this is a service that almost all of you use with us. And for those of you who don't, this is just a great introduction to the power that ACH has, what it can do for your business, and how you can protect yourself using ACH origination. So we are going to get started here. So our agenda for today, we're going to cover ACH rules at a very high level. We're going to talk about a couple different case studies that we've encountered here at the bank as it relates to fraud, and just some best practices to make sure that you're getting the most out of the ACH origination service. All right, so first and foremost, we're just going to talk about what is ACH. So when I say ACH, it's an acronym. It stands for Automated Clearinghouse. It's a payment network. So you think about when you swipe your debit card, that's a specific payment network. If you write a check, that's a different payment network. ACH goes through a payment network that basically facilitates your external deposits and external withdrawals. It's governed by an organization called the National Automated Clearinghouse Association, which the acronym there is NACHA. You might see that one sprinkled throughout the presentation as well. And what NACHA does is they set the operating rules and guidelines. So basically, they publish this great big book every year that tells us what we can and can't do within the ACH network. The rules are the legal framework, all the laws that have to do with ACH, and the guidelines help instruct procedures as to how we are allowed to use ACH. So this is just in a nutshell how ACH works. So you're a business, you need to move money, you send us a file. So you move money from your business to Chelsea Groton Bank. Chelsea Groton Bank then moves that file to the Fed. The Fed will then distribute that file with that money to all the institutions where either your employees or your vendors bank. And those receiving institutions will push it to what in the ACH network is called a receiver. Basically, it's your employee if you're doing direct deposit, it's a vendor if you're paying a bill, those types of things. So it's just in a high level nutshell how ACH flows through the network. So checks versus ACH origination. We've been hearing this a lot from customers that checks are just not convenient anymore. You know, there's been a big dip in check writing across the industry that has not bounced back since COVID. So you think about checks. You give a check to an employee. If I give a check to Miria is in complete control of when that check clears, when she negotiates that check and when it comes out of my account. Also, if I give Miria a check and say she loses it, all of my account information is on that check, and whoever picks up that check can commit fraud based on the information on the check. And again, if Miria loses it, I have to do a stop payment, which would cost me money, and I'd have to reprocess the check, which is kind of inconvenient. So checks are just not convenient anymore. Anybody who knows me knows that I am anti-paper, so I like anything electronic as much as I can. And ACH does that for you because it is an electronic movement of money. You set the timing of when that payment goes out. So rather than relying on somebody else to cash it when they get to it type of thing, you can say, I want this money to reach its destination on Friday. The money comes out of your account and you know the other party has that money on Friday. Your business account information remains secure. There's no checks out there with your routing number and account number floating around. And because you're direct depositing into somebody else's account, their information is secure for reasons we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So at a high level, that is ACH, how it works, and what I think the value is. So we just want to talk a little bit about the rules. So like I said, that big book goes into a lot of details about a lot of different types of ACH. So we're just going to narrow in on the specific rules that apply to ACH origination. So first and foremost is the agreement. So anytime anybody wants to use the ACH origination service with us, we're required to enter into an agreement. That big rule book I held up a minute ago requires it according to the article that I cited here on the bottom. One of the things that you're agreeing to when you enter into that agreement are, first and foremost, that you authorize us to push ACH payments out for you. So what we're doing is you're sending us a file and we're sending it to the Fed. Basically, you're giving us permission to push a file out of your account using your tax ID into the ACH network. You agree to be bound to the ACH rules, which we're going to talk about today. You won't violate any U.S. laws. For example, OFAC is a big one. So we don't want to send any money to anybody on a sanctioned party list, those types of things. You won't originate restricted entry. So what we mean by that is international ACH transactions. You can do international wire transfers. It's just we don't permit international ACH transfers. They're very risky entity. And so if for whatever reason we can terminate the agreement if for some reason rules aren't being followed, fraud is repeatedly happening. We've never had to do it in my almost 10 years doing ACH with the bank, but we do have the right to do it if we need to, and it would have to be an extreme situation. And last but not least is we can audit any compliance with the rules. So for example, if you are supposed to be getting a direct deposit form from your customers in order to do payments, we can double check to make sure that that type of thing is happening. So we'll talk to you about what specific rules apply to your specific ACH origination scenario when we're onboarding you, but we do have the right to come in and just double check to make sure that you're complying with the rules. Within the agreement, we do have security procedures, and they are meant to keep everybody safe, to keep all of these payments safe. So in a nutshell, we're talking about the electronic file transmission portion of online banking at this point. So the way that it works is you're going to do all of your files in ACH, online banking. So you're going to log into online banking. You're going to use a security token to get into the ACH section of the website, and you're going to do a file. Either you can use what's native within our system to build your files. You can upload a file into our system. But all of that, once you're into our online banking, that's a secure way of sending your ACH files. And again, they're all going to be loaded through the online banking. One of the rules that applies to anybody doing ACH is this protected information bullet. So anytime that the bank account information is stored electronically, it has to be encrypted according to the ACH rules. If it's in our online banking system, it is encrypted. We mention it just in case you have this information stored elsewhere on your computer. It is a requirement that that information be encrypted if you're not interacting with it. So these are the 5 security procedures that we recommend, that we require as part of our agreement. So dual control. So we have dual control as a security procedure because, so the way that it works is I input a file, Miria would approve it for me. It's just a good double check to make sure that I didn't add in extra zeros, everything's going where it's supposed to be. It's just good checks and balances to make sure A, I didn't make an error, or B, that there's no fraud happening. Number 2 is processing calendar. So the processing calendar for ACH is dictated by the Federal Reserve. For example, you cannot send an ACH file on Christmas. The Federal Reserve is closed. So we are required to adhere to the processing calendar set by the Fed. Third is dedicated computer. So the reason that we have dedicated computer as a security procedure is we recommend that you only do online banking, ACH, from a computer dedicated for banking purposes. It's not a computer where you are checking your email, operating your business, using an accounting software, those types of things. It's pretty easy to compromise computers via, email fraud, those types of things. So if you're using a computer only for online banking, the risk of something happening, a virus getting in, is lower, which then protects your computer and all of that online banking. Number 4 is payment activity review. So we recommend that you review your accounts daily to make sure that everything coming in and going out is authorized by you, and that everything looks correct. As we've mentioned in several education courses and those types of things, the return window on business activity is very narrow. It's only 24 hours in many cases. So we want to make sure that you're reviewing your account, reporting fraud to us so that we can take care of any kind of issues. Positive Pay is a great way to automate that, but that's a separate conversation for another day. If anybody wants to talk about it sooner, certainly give me a call. And then last but not least is security token. So because ACH is a quick way to move money through the system, we require that every user who has the authority to send an ACH file has a security token. So it could be a physical key fob, or it could be an app on your Android or iPhone that you take the code off of either of those devices and you enter it into the ACH service so that you can get in and make your payments. It's just an additional protection to make sure that it truly is you signing in. If for some reason your online banking username and password are compromised, a fraudster can't also get into the ACH section unless they have your security token. So that is rules in a nutshell. I'm going to pause for a moment to see if anybody has any. All right, so we're going to move on to my favorite topic, which is fraud mitigation. So fraud is rampant, and the biggest type of fraud that we see is what's called business email compromise. So this is the definition of what business email compromise is. Basically, it's when somebody sends a fraudulent email to somebody within the organization trying to trick them into sending money. It is happening across the industry. So according to the FBI's Internet Crime Report on business email compromise, in 2021, 15,000 businesses experienced some form of business email compromise, which accounted for 77% of. I was actually kind of shocked when I saw that that number was so high, just because that's the majority of businesses. 3/4 of businesses are experiencing business email. And it has cost businesses $8.6 billion. So it is happening, it is scary, and we do want to make sure everybody's protecting them. So one of the most common types of fraud that we see, the business email compromise that we see, is what's called spoofing. So what happens is an imposter will slightly change an email address, intentionally trying to trick you. So here's an example. So we have a legitimate email that's chelsea@chelsearotten.com. The fraudster can create an email that changes just that third letter from an E to a C. And they like doing those types of things because if you're looking at it quickly and you're not looking at it at size 18 font, you probably won't pick up on the fact that they changed the E to a C just because it's so close. So those types of little things, you really want to make sure that if you're getting an email from somebody, that you are looking to make sure that it is the correct email for the person you're expecting to receive that email from. So we have a couple case studies. These are actual situations that our customers have faced. So the first one is a payroll scam. So we've seen this one a couple of times where somebody will send an email to the payroll department asking that their direct deposit be updated. The payroll department makes the updates, and then on payday, that employee says, "Hey, I didn't get paid." Payroll department says, "You asked to change your direct deposit information." Employee says, "No, I didn't." Turns out it was an imposter who had sent an email to that payroll department to change that direct deposit information.
Yeah.
If you run into those types of situations, certainly give us a call. We can try to recoup any of that money that got sent out fraudulently. To be really transparent, it is it's pretty hard to try to get that money back. The second case study we've seen this one a couple of times too, where businesses will get an email from a vendor that they've worked with forever. All of a sudden, that vendor wants to get paid by ACH instead of check. It's very common that vendors want payments electronically rather than waiting for a check in the mail. Again, it's just a decrease in check activity in the payment networks. So it is pretty common, but fraudsters have found a way to exploit it. They're usually saying that they need the money urgently in order to pay the bill, but it turns out that it really is a fraudster. So things to be paying attention for when you're interacting with vendors in those situations. If anytime it's a new payment information, you really want to pause to make sure that the payment information and the email is legitimate, because you do want to look out for those possible email compromises. So how can we prevent this type of fraud? So first and foremost is vigilance when payment instructions come in via email. So a common type of scam that we see that I get all the time, even here at Chelsea Groton, I get emails, as somebody posing as our CEO asking that I do an ACH or a wire transfer pretty urgently. At the top of our emails, as I've seen with many of yours, there's always a banner that says this email originated outside of your organization. So you want to be paying attention to those banners, because why would my CEO be emailing me from outside of the organization to any kind of payment like that? You just want to double check to make sure it's not a spoofed email, that it is coming from who it should be coming. We also, I would go so far as to say, require a verbal verification of payment instructions with the recipient of the funds. So what that looks like is anytime that you are sending money for the first time, or anytime anybody needs to change the payment instructions and you get that information via email, we say that you should be calling whoever you know at that company. You should be calling your employee if they want to change their direct deposit information. You should be calling the vendor to run through the payment information. And it's not enough to say, hey, are you looking to update your information? You should be running through the routing number and account number that you received to make sure that it is truly what that recipient thinks it should be. Again, we just want to make sure that all the money goes where it's supposed to go and doesn't end up in the hands of. So anybody who wants to learn any more about this topic, like I said, it's fascinating. It's one of my favorite ones. We do have a cybersecurity forum coming up on October 27th at the Mystic Marriott. So we ran this program a couple years ago, and what it comprises of is it's a panel of cybersecurity experts. We have bank employees who will be there talking. We have industry IT experts who will be there, and we also have a representative from a police department to talk about some of the criminal aspects of what we're talking about here, just so you can learn more about this topic, what people are seeing, and how to protect yourself. All right, so our last section is best practices. There are 3 things that are covered under the ACH rules that you can implement at your business to make sure that you are getting the most out of the ACH origination service. And the first is pre-note. So basically your pre-note is your tester transaction. It's a $0 entry that you send before you send any money to a receiver. When the receiving institution gets your pre-note, they're going to look to make sure that that account information is active within their system. So why we think this is a good idea. So it ensures that any money that you send, that the account information is valid prior to sending any money. We've seen a couple of times where somebody maybe doesn't do a pre-note, they send money and it doesn't get to its destination. Those funds are usually in limbo for a couple of days until we get them back from the other institution. So if you do a pre-note, you can ensure that the account information is accurate before you send any kind of money. If you do a pre-note, you are required to wait 3 business days after sending the pre-note before you do any monetary transactions. So if you sent a pre-note on Wednesday, the first day that you can do any kind of transmittal of actual money is on Monday. That just gives the receiving institution a couple of days to make sure that that account information is valid and to respond back if any changes are needed. So the second one is notification of change. So what this is you've sent an ACH payment out to a receiver. The receiving institution says there's something wrong with the routing number, the account number, the transaction type. Maybe we have it coded as a checking, but should be a savings. They've posted the money for the receiver, for the person you're trying to send the money to, or the company you're trying to send the money to. But they're communicating back to us that you need to make an update to that ACH payment if you continue to pay that employee or vendor in the future. And the alert will contain the information that should be used going forward. So if you need to make an update to the account number, that receiving institution is telling us the account number you're supposed to use going forward. Transaction type from checking to savings or vice versa, the alert will contain that information too. So if you're never planning on paying that vendor or person again, you don't need to do anything when you get a notification of change. What will happen is we'll send you an email once we get it so that you're aware that something needs to happen with that ACH transaction. But if you're never planning on paying them again, you don't need to do anything. But if you are planning on paying that person again, like deposit, it's a recurring vendor payment, you are required to update that ACH information prior to initiating more transactions. Like I said, it's a requirement under the ACH rules. And just from a convenience perspective, it prevents delays or returns of future payments. So if you continue to originate payments with incorrect information, it might take the other institution a couple of days to post it to that employee. They may not continue to post it for that employee. So it just creates headaches if if businesses don't update the information according to a notification. And then the last topic is exposure limits. So again, this one's a requirement under ACH rules that we have to set limits on ACH transactions. So to explain philosophically what Chelsea Groton's approach is, we work with every customer who takes on the service. We're looking at your activity. We're talking to you about what you're going to be using ACH for. Our goal is not to set limits that are restrictive to you, but reasonable. We want to make sure that the limits are high enough that they don't get in your way, but not so high that somebody can add an extra zero and send out a payment for more than they're supposed to. Or if somebody did hack into the system, that that money is protected. It's not going to completely wipe out the account. So we do set limits on the transaction, which is the amount that you can send to any single individual, the batch, which is all of the entries within a specific file, and per day. So again, we're working with everybody at onboarding to make sure that the limits are appropriate for your business.
Kelly,
and it's also managed by entitlements. Sure.
We do have a question. It says our ACH payment description shows as pending SEA research FPPD. How can we change this to show the receiver's name?
Say that one more time.
It says our ACH payments description show as pending. See research FPPD. How can we change this to show the receiver's name?
So there's a so I think what is happening is on our business customers bank statement, I think is how I'm taking that question, but if I'm misreading that, let me know. So our transaction description on our business customers account is going to show the pre-funding withdrawal and the names that it's supposed to be going through. That is just a system thing that we have to have it set that way. If it's referring to what the receiver receives, that you can dictate when you set up the file under the company entry description. So if you want your employee vendor to see a specific description, you dictate that in the company entry description. Does that answer? Let me know if you get a follow-up. But on limits, so once we set limits for the business, owners can set lower limits for their employees if they want to. So they can set anything below what Chelsea Groton has set. So Chelsea Groton is looking at those limits at least once a year. We are looking at everybody's ACH setup to make sure that those limits are appropriate. If we see that you're just slightly under what we've set for you, we're going to be looking to, we're going to be talking to you to see, what's changed. Has your ACH needs increased? Can we adjust those limits? Like I said, our goal is not to get in anybody's way, but we do want to make sure that your money is protected. That is everything that I wanted to cover. What other questions? I'm
Kelly,
happy to hang out.
You did a great job. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa.
We do have a question. How are we notified of NOC email? Is there a place online to see them?
So right now we are, the cash management operations team is sending them out via email. You'll either get an email from Lauren Smith, Mary Sparrow, or myself when you have a notification of change in NOC. We don't currently have a place online that we can see them. It is a part of Chelsea Groton's project plan to get them online. So it is something we're working on. It's not going to be a quick, easy fix, unfortunately. So it is going to take us some time to get that built out in online banking.
So I have a question about the limits and the daily limit. So I was told that the daily limit was, federally monitored, and that's what I provided to our CFO and CEO. So now I'm thinking that that's not true, and it definitely has been hindering our ACH payments, meaning, we have to send more than one, or space them out for the same invoice. And I notice a lot of companies that we're dealing with that go over that threshold have now moved where we can pay them on their platform. So I'm just, who do I talk to about whether our limit is at the limit that's federally monitored, or, if we can change that limit? Is that our banking relationship manager, or?
Yeah, no, I can send you a message after this meeting, Kim, so that we can chat about that.
Okay.
So when we talk about ACH limits, we're talking just about what you can do in online banking. If you need to go out to a third-party website to make any kind of payments, there's no limit on that. Your limit basically is your balance in your checking account.
Yeah, no, I'm
but
talking
if
about
you-
the ones that we initiate through Chelsea.
Yep. All right, you got it. I'll send you an email after this so we can have
All right,
more
thank
conversation.
you.
You should not be pacing this out over multiple days in order to get
Okay,
your bills
thanks.
paid. That's not our goal.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Kelly? So I will be sending a follow-up email to everybody with information about the class, the recording of today's class in case you would like to share it with anybody, as well as a link to register for the cybersecurity forum in case you're interested in that. It's free. We'll do kind of like a mini breakfast and a panel discussion. So you have from now to then to think of all the questions that you might want to ask everybody. And if you have any questions after that, I'm sure Kelly would be happy to answer them for you. Or offline if you're not comfortable talking online. Yes, Kelly, is it okay if we send a copy of the presentation?
Absolutely. I'll email it over to you so that you have it.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for jumping on this morning bright and early to talk about ACH. Thanks for all the questions. And if you think of anything later, like Miria said, you can certainly reach out to me directly. We can make sure that you have my direct contact information as part of that. So if you think of anything later, you can certainly get in touch with me. But I appreciate you jumping on this morning.
I'll include all of Kelly's direct contact information, including her home address. No, just joking. In in my follow-up email.
Everyone have a good day.